Welcome to Papa's Workshop. The video that I'm about to show you is a Patreon video. A short time ago, I did a video on the keyhole generator that was used in Easel. And this Patreon video was a follow-up to that, in which I go into much greater detail. And I found a little glitch in that keyhole generator that I wasn't aware of, and I show you a workaround. Now I've added another change for this year. If you choose to support my channel and join the Patreon community, I have a new tier that only costs $1 per month. And this in light of the pandemic that all of us have experienced and impacted our lives tremendously. This is a way that I wanted to be able to offer another means to be able to help out and lower that entry level to just $1 to be able to take advantage of these ad-free videos that I'm going to be including this year. Now the Patreon video was an ad-free video when I uploaded it. And this is what you're going to see today. Now this video is not ad-free. It'll have some ads in it. But it shows you the content that I'm adding to the Patreon community for this year. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to show you this video. Hi, welcome to Papa's Workshop. This is a Patreon video in which I'm going to go into much greater detail on using the Keyhole app in Easel. Now, if you haven't looked at the first video that I published on YouTube, where I explain how to use the very basics of the Keyhole generator, you might want to go over there and take a look at that one first, and then come and look at this one. Because on this video, I want to be able to go into much greater detail than what I did there. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's cover all of the different aspects of the keyhole generator in Easel. The first thing I want to talk about is the bits themselves. Now I have 3 different bits. One of these bits is very inexpensive, and then I have 2 others that are, I would say, reasonably priced bits. Now the interesting thing about this is that these bits all come from the big box stores. When I go to the big box stores, I always go to the router bit section and see what's available, because these are not always kept in stock. Sometimes they're available and sometimes they're not. So I don't know who's buying them, or they just keep a very small supply. But one of the things that I have found at the big box stores is that this portion of the bit right here is typically the same. Now, they do have online where you could buy different ones, but that is 0.7 of an inch. And if I look at this one, let's take a look at this measurement. If I can get it there. There we go. And this one was 0.19. And let's look at the third one. And this one is 0.18. So all of them virtually the same thickness. Now the reason that I like this bit is because it has these little reference marks right here, and on the other side it has a deeper one. Now what's nice about this, you can actually use this as the guide to be able to set the depth of cut for the router. I like this one right here because this is about 0.07 of an inch. Now you can actually make this as thick as you like. As you can see, they have another reference mark on the other side, but you really don't need it that thick. All you're trying to do is keep the material there so that when the artwork is hanging on the wall, it has a lip so that it won't fall off and unhook from the screw. So this actually at the 0.07 or 0.08, okay, would be just fine. But if I measure this, I want to be able to catch this right here and show you at this point. And that's about 0.07 of an inch thick. Now that's on this side of that reference mark. This reference mark is fairly thick, so it goes from about 0.07 up to about 0.09 of a thickness there. But that is plenty of a wall thickness on your project to be able to secure that screw or nail in the wall so that your project won't fall off. And to be able to show that to you, this is that wall thickness right there. By darkening it in, I think you'll be able to see that a little bit better. But that's plenty of surface to be able to support the project from falling off. Because the weight of the project is actually up here on this area. It's not on this thin wall. Now I actually want to show you where I cut out one of the keyhole slots. And I want to color this in for you. Now that actually shows the thickness of that wall, and that's plenty of support. And even on the pine, which is a soft wood, that is plenty of support. You can put the nail or screw in here and pull on it, and it's not going to break loose. So this is plenty of material. And you might be able to see it even better from this angle right there. So that's the reason I set the depth of mine when I set it up into the CNC machine at 0.27. Goes from right there and if I set that up at that distance right there at 0.27, 26, any of that works just fine. But typically I settle on 0.27 of an inch. So that is the depth that this goes straight down into the material, is at 0.27 of an inch. So you want that bit to go straight down in there. And then it's going to cut. Now why is it moving back and forth? The reason, after this bit plunges down to the full depth of the 0.27, and then it starts moving in this direction, the reason that it's moving and comes back is clearing all of that sawdust out. There's a tremendous amount of sawdust that's being generated by this bit. And as a result, it'll cut a little bit, back up, clear it, and then cut a little bit more, and repeat that process until it reaches the full length. In this case, it was 1 inch that I had set up. And then there, it just retracts and comes back straight up. Now remember, the XY 0 position is actually right here. That's the 0 position. So this is where the bit actually has the home position. And it comes down to this point and then plows straight into the material. Now, if you do not set for the depth per pass at the 0.27 and leave it as it sits in the easel to begin with, you're going to have a trough that is this total width of this bit, because it's going to make a pass, it's going to go a little bit deeper and make another pass, and it's continue to do that until it reaches to full depth. And you really don't want that. So let's go over now and look at Easel itself. Now what I've done is just opened up a brand new project, and this is the screen that will show up. And this one, and it really doesn't matter the size, but let's just assume that this project is 8 inches by 12 inches, and that is shown right over here as the 8 inches by the 12 inches. And I want to get a little bit closer here so that you can see this. Now this is what I want to concentrate on. The thickness of the material really doesn't matter. As long as it's thicker than the 0.27 of an inch, you're going to be fine. So mine being set here at a 1/2 inch is perfectly okay, because I'm not planning on cutting all the way through the material. So if your material is actually 0.75 of an inch and you feel more comfortable with going ahead and setting that at 0.75, that's a good habit to get into, and that's perfectly fine. Now, one of the things that you're going to find is there is not a keyhole bit that's in your tool library. and I really don't see the need to setting up one. Using an 1/8 inch straight bit works just fine. So I always use this right there. Now this is the important part that I want to talk about. Let's go into the cut settings. The standard cut setting that it has when you're working with the birch plywood is this 40 inches per minute as far as the feed rate. To me, that actually is too fast because you're trying to remove so much material at one time. So that's the reason I like to slow it down. The plunge rate itself is perfectly fine. We'll leave that alone. And then this is what gets people into trouble. This is set at 0.05 of an inch. So if it's trying to reach to a 0.27 and you don't change this, it's going to make a series of passes until it gets to that 0.27, and you're going to end up with one big trough. So to change that, you go right here to the manual. So I'm going to change my feed rate to 30 inches a minute. So I just type in 30, hit the tab. We're going to leave this alone, so I'll hit the tab again, and this is my 0.27. Once you have that done, your measurements are set. The next thing I want to concentrate on is the app itself. And you're going to find that app right here. And it's, when you scroll over that, it's actually going to say apps right next to it. So I'm going to click on it, and we'll scroll down, and we will find the Keyhole Generator app. So let me highlight that for you. Now in the first video, I just used a 1. Now you only have a choice of 1 or 2. If I use this slide bar and just click on it, it'll change it to the 2. There's really no need to do anything else. You only get that one choice. You can have 1 or 2. Since in the first video I talked about using just a 1 keyhole slot, this time I want to talk about the 2. Now this time it is displaying 2 of them, and they're horizontal, meaning that they are left and right of each other. This depth, again, we got to change that to that 0.27 of an inch. That way they match in the cut setting and in the design screen. The length of the cut can be the 1 inch, which I typically use, but if you want to add it to 1.5 inches, certainly you can do that, or any length that works well for you. I'll just leave this one at the 1.5 inches. Now as far as the spacing, this is something that you can decide on your workpiece. Now my particular workpiece is 12 inches wide on the x-axis, and since we're working on the horizontal direction, that's what I want to be able to do. So my spacing, I would probably want that about 6 inches, maybe even a little bit more. But let's just go ahead and type in 6 inches, and then let's import that in. What that does is it measures it from this center point right here, and it measures 3 inches to the either side of my center point on the project. And that would give me my total 6 inches of spacing. The other thing that happens is that this now is centered on the y-axis also. So this was 8 inches on the y-axis, so this point is 4 inches. If you don't want that, you can actually move this to anywhere you want just by putting the box around it, highlighting both of them, and then just come up here to the shape menu. I like to be able to click right there on that center dot. Now I have the 6 and the 4, as I discussed, right there being the center point. What I like to be able to do on the project is have this where it's in the top third of my project when I'm cutting it. When I used to do a lot of picture framing, the wire hanger was always about 1/3 of the way down. Now since this is 12 inches, this needs to be down about roughly 4 inches down. Between 3 and 4 inches works well. Now keep in mind, we made this one 1.5 inches. So it's going to be a little bit more of the math situation. But basically, all we need to do is change the y-axis. Now, what we need to be able to do is move this up about 1 inch. So what I'm going to do is raise this up to about 6 inches. So we're at the 4, and let's see what 6 inches will do. We'll type in the 6 and hit the tab, and you can see now it's right up here at that 7-inch mark. Probably a little bit high. So I'm going to go ahead and lower it down 1 inch. And this is the nice thing about this. This gives you the graphics representation of exactly what's taken place. And having this now centered at the 6 inch on the x-axis and on the 5 inches on the y-axis looks just about perfect. Now what's actually going to happen? Well, let's look at this project over here. By looking at this screen, this gives you a real good idea of what it's going to look like. Now keep in mind, it can't do and actually show you what the keyhole slot is going to look like, but it does show this big slot. So let's go ahead and simulate this. Now you can see, I'm going to shrink that we use the XY0 position right here at the bottom, and it comes up and it carves these two, and then it returns. So if we go ahead and look close at this, and I want to hide the material, now we can see what's happening. It will come up, it will go straight down, it will do the cut, return, and then exit, and then it moves to the other one. That is exactly what we want to be able to have happen. Oftentimes, when I'm doing the carving of the keyhole slots, I like to be able to set my XY0 position right here at this point. So I can actually highlight both of these again, and then select this point be in the center. And then I'm going to highlight this as a 0 and 0, and it moves it over. So if I zoom out and get this back in the center of the screen for you so you can see what's happening, this is where it is. Right here now is my new XY0 position for my home, and it will do the exact same thing. The CNC machine does not care that this is a blue area or a white area. In fact, if I zoom out and show you this whole entire surface here is the wasteboard. This white area is actually the materials that we're cutting, and we're cutting just these two slots. Let me zoom in a little bit. Now I want to show you this because I think it's important. This lighter blue area is the actual wasteboard. This white area is the size of the material. Over here on this screen, the same thing is shown by having this line right here. But the thing about it is, the CNC machine doesn't care where you have the 0.00 home position. Really doesn't. It will carve out here just fine. And to be able to show you that, I'm going to move this over a little bit. We're going to zoom in closer. There we go. And let's hit simulate. And I'm going to move this up here. We'll hit simulate. And you can see it doesn't care about this. It goes ahead and does this carving just fine without any problem at all. Now it's important to note that it's not going to show anything on here. It's not going to show this blue area. That's okay, but it is going to carve. What you want to be able to make sure of, let me back this out. What you want to make sure of, if you have your project, and I'm going to go ahead and just create a project here, and we're going to create this size, this shape, at the 12 inches and the 8 inches. So now this is the same size as this. what you must do with your project, if you're going to use the XY0 position like that, you must take your project and position it somewhere in the work area within this space. That's the key thing. And then what's going to happen, let's go ahead and change this so we get an outline. Okay. So now you can mark your center point where you want this to carve right here. So this is where you would put it to have it measured off of the center for your XY 0 position being here. Then you take your project board itself and you can place it anywhere that you wish. I'm just going to set it right here for the moment. Now, with this in this position, the computer knows that this is the XY0 position for the home. So what I want to do at this point, I'm going to just hit Control C and Control V. I'm going to make an extra set of them. Because this is what you're going to set up to be able to carve. You're going to clamp down your workpiece somewhere on your wasteboard so that it's not going to run off of your wasteboard when it carves. But you're going to use the center of this position as your XY0 home position, just as it shows here. So if this is where you want it to be, that is where it's going to carve. I've created another workpiece down here. I want to go back to the app. Going to click on the generator app. We're going to click this so it has two. This time let's click on the vertical. We'll change this to the 0.27 of an inch. And we'll leave the length of cut 1 inch. The spacing, this time I want to change the spacing because this is 1 inch, 2 inches. We have a board that's 8 inches, so we can't run off of our board. So let's see, 4 inches should be enough. And let's import that. So now we have the spacing here, but they're in the vertical position. Why is that important? Well, if you have the top of your workpiece here on your project, now it makes sense. Because I can highlight this, just as we did before, I can slide it up into that area and be able to be roughly 1/3 of the way down from the top of the workpiece. So this is a very handy tool. The other thing that you can do also that people don't think about, just because you use the app, you can now take these and literally move them independent of each other anywhere that you want. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these now, and we're going to do the exact same thing, and I want to show you one more thing that's real handy with this. So we'll hit the app. I'm going to scroll down to the app again. We're going to click on 2. Going to stay on the, we'll use the vertical, 0.27. Always remember to do that. Length to the cut will be 1. We'll make the spacing the 4 inches again, and we'll import that. Now, I showed you that these were working independent. What happens if I select both of them and come up to the edit and combine? Now I have 1. So now I can take these and move them anywhere that I want, but they act as one unit. And most people don't realize that that is a possibility. So now if you want to be able to center this in your workpiece, all you need to do is come up to your shape menu, select a center. So this is now where it's going to be. And let's say, for an example, on the y-axis, I want that on the 4 inches. And there it is. It's right on the 4 inches. And that's exactly halfway. Other people will say, well, wait a minute, I'm trying to change my mind. I don't want my project, the top of the project on this side. I'm going to go ahead and rotate it. Well, right here is an angle. I can rotate this 90 degrees, and I now have it rotated back into the horizontal position, and I can do the exact same thing. I can go ahead and position this anywhere that I want it. So remember, this was 12 inches. I'm going to put this on the x-axis at 6. Now it's centered. How is this going to carve now that I've rotated it? We'll hit the simulate. Now you see where it says with the error message, there is nothing to carve. This is actually a little glitch in the system, and I want to be able to show you a workaround so that you can still do this same thing and not get the error. I also want to point out that when I rotated it, it disappeared from the preview screen, and by rotating it back, it shows up again. I want you to see this one more time. As I take this and I rotate it the 90 degrees, look at the preview screen, and you will see that it actually disappears. And now it disappears over here. So it does not allow me to rotate it. So if I rotate this back to 0, it shows up again. So this is something that's important to note. Now I'm going to try this and rotate it, and will it let me do it? Now it will let me do it. But for some reason, when I rotate it here, let's put this at 270. Now I can rotate it manually and it will work. You will see it. But as soon as I hit that actual 90-degree point, then it will disappear. That is the key point I want you to see. So as long as it's not directly on that, that's interesting about this. Let's rotate it back around this way. And this would be at 89.9. Let's make it at 90. And let's see what happens. When we put it at 90, it disappears. So that's an interesting point that I was not aware of. So as long as you have it in that area, it will work fine. Dragging this and rotating it down this way, as long as you're just under that 270, that 90-degree angle, it works. If you drop to the 270, it disappears when you're right on. So 269.9, and it still shows up. So you could be slightly off. But if you put this at the 270, then it disappears and there's nothing to carve. Now that's an interesting thing. So please be aware of that. That's something that I just learned and did not expect that. And if you change this to the 269.9, let's try this, 269.99, and it shows up. I think your project would be just fine if you wanted to rotate it and do this quick little workaround and put in 269.99. You'll never know that it's 1/100th of an inch off. Because when you hit the actual 270, this disappears over here, and if we click on simulate, it'll say there's nothing to carve. However, at the 269.99, it does show up over here, and it will simulate and carve. Very interesting to know that little extra feature. Thank you for watching today, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And please consider joining my growing Patreon community. And until next time, bye-bye.